When this morning's guest wanted to go to Washington, he first had to go through Gallivan's Ferry. Meet former Congressman Jenrette on this morning's Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Design It, Retail Furniture Gallery on Highway 501 in front of the new Hard Rock Park. We're focused on the Gallivan's Ferry Stump, which kicks off next Monday. And we're visiting with the Honorable Jenrette Jr., a former member of Congress and a longtime attendee at the Stump. Good morning. You mind if I call you John?
Certainly not. And, 6 days, those of us old political people that get riled up, our stomachs start turning about 6 to 8 days before the Stump. It's something like we're addicted to it somewhat. You go and you see so many people that you haven't seen in so many years, and all of them, they're there because of politics. And so you reminisce and you talk about it. So we just look forward to it. I wish it were a 3-day event. If the holidays would open up their home and all and let us come in for 3 days, we'd just have a great time over there. But they've been gracious over the years, and it's wonderful that they are doing that. And as a kid that grew up here and watched the holidays and their businesses and their fine professionalism, and then had the opportunity to meet them and know them and have them as constituents, and hopefully they voted for me once or twice. But anyway, it was fun knowing them, and anyone in politics in the state of South Carolina has got to owe a gratitude to the family for just keeping this going. We used to do 15 or 20 or 30 stump speaking sort of around this county, just this one county, and it just got so that there were only a few people going to some of them. So then when television all came along and that cut back, the fact that the holidays bucked all the trends, kept it going, has made it one of the features in the state now, festive sort of features that you just can't miss. If you have any interest in it.
Yesterday highlighting the week away, and obviously hearing her talk about all the stuff that has to happen over the next few days. But you're right, it is truly something that there should be a debt of gratitude from folks all over the state. And friends, I think you mentioned earlier this morning, you've got friends who come from far away to attend.
Yeah, Fort Mill and the Charlotte area, a group comes down every time, and you just see them, and they're just like old Lee County people because they're here so much. It's great, and I see people every time I go that I haven't seen in years and years and years, and it's a high for me. It really is, just being there and knowing it and thinking about how this thing started, standing on the stump at the water's edge, and talking to the people. It's just a magnificent thing. And I always had people, when I was fortunate enough to serve this district in Congress, had people that would come down that wanted to hear it, that hear about it, and I've told about Gallivan's Ferry Stump so many times. I had an office in Belarus at one time, and I told some of the Russians that they ought to come over to Gallivan's Ferry to our stump speaking, that they would become democratic from top to bottom. So,
they may not have taken you up on it, but at least they heard about it.
No, they finally ran me out of town, but not because of politics, but it was a business thing. But it was fun, and just knowing the people that have been there all these years and how it got started, and I think probably the symbol of if one person was a symbol of the Gallivan's Ferry Stump, other than the holidays who did it, Senator Hollings, that was so long. He was so close to the holidays. I suspect John Monroe and Fritz did marches together for many years and went to politics, and I imagine when Fritz passes on and gets to heaven, I imagine he and John Monroe will be doing some drills up there.
But 1954 was the year, obviously, he kicked off his run for lieutenant governor at the Stump. Yes. And then, of course, in 04, his 50-year celebration, he was there to highlight that. And then even 2 years ago to introduce Senator Biden when he was, if you remember, a very emotional speech about helping to keep him in the U.S. Senate.
It was... he was such a mentor for many of us, certainly for me, and the fact that he was always there. He and John Monroe were such close friends that he would call and the senator would come, and that would bring a lot of people, bring us national attention. And it was just great having him on board to start that. And I just, thought the world of him. I still do, and I just look forward to seeing him every time at the stump, and having this opportunity to serve in Congress with Senator Hollings was a great treat.
Oh, yeah, yeah. John, think about it for you. Do you remember your first stump experience?
I remember I just received my driver's license, and some men from Loris asked me if I would drive them over. They had some other things they wanted to do while we were riding over, talking business and all. So I drove them over and was just mesmerized at all those people there talking. I said, man, you know, I might ought to do this one day.
That may have kicked off your political bug.
It may have. It may
wow.
have. It was a lot of fun, and I don't know that I've missed over one or two since that time.
And since the 50s, you mentioned. Yeah.
I probably have been there about as many as anyone living now.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them went a lot more than me, but it's, as I say, as a political junkie, I just love it.
Of course, Russell mentioned yesterday a lot of Republicans will be there. They won't be up on the platform speaking to the group, but you probably see a lot of friends on both sides of the aisle.
I do, and it's we enjoy them coming out because we know that they need help. And what little tidbits they can get from the Gallup Ferry stump, if they're elected, will help them be better representatives or better servants for the people.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
you know, they get some. The Gallup Ferry stump has got a lot of issues that pass through if you just sit there and listen to those guys.
Right.
Some of them, I mean, I've heard some with such off-wall things that they probably shouldn't have been there, and that's probably me sometimes too. But and then you've heard people would come up with some proposals that you hadn't thought of that are really good. They have a chance to express it before people and to try to get their point across. So it's a give and take, an opportunity for the people to see, you know, if a guy has not, a guy or girl has not run for office before, and they have to get up there before that crowd of people and make their case as their first time they've done something.
Right.
It's experience they'll never forget. And I've seen a lot of them that were shaking like everything when they were standing up there.
I bet.
It was and I know the first time I was there, my stomach, when I spoke, my stomach was churning, and it still does. When you get up there and you think about the history that has been, all of the people that have been there, that have led this state, have done such good. William Brennan, Brian Dorn, all of these people that have made such a great history for South Carolina. It is just, it's you can't find that anywhere else. You can speak in an auditorium anywhere, but if you had your trucks passing by, you got to modulate your tone to let people know you're hearing you.
Right.
You hear the people coming down the river, the boats coming down the river. Oh, it's a great thing, and
very powerful experience.
It is, and the church serves chicken bog. I remember I had Tom Foley, the Speaker of the House.
No. And
he wasn't able to come to that, but I took him some chicken bog from the stump, and he called me that afternoon and said, John, said, tell me now, said, what is in this chicken bob?
Chicken bob.
Chicken bob, yeah, chicken bob. He enjoyed it and had great experience out there. Took chicken bob from Gallup Ferry to Tip O'Neill, who was one of my dearest friends, and it was easy to get Tip to come. I'm sorry he wasn't able to come to the stump because as a member of Congress, we run every 2 years. So in May, when we were having the stump, he was campaigning in Boston, but. He loved the chicken bog. He just loved the chicken bog. He loved coming down here because he's a great golfer, and we had all these golf courses. And John Monroe, they'd give him passage to play at Myrtle Beach National and some of the places they had. So he was a great friend.
I love it, John. I'm sure you've got some great memories of both John Monroe and Joseph Holliday, the two patriarchs. For years now, it's matriarchs and others. Visiting with Russell yesterday, and of course even more generations. They're passing on to the fifth generation now.
Isn't that something?
But probably some exciting memories of time with those men.
I guess probably most they, as gracious as they are the whole family. They don't mind asking you for things. They don't mind asking you for help in politics or something like that because they are doing it for the good of the community, and they know that they had the polishedness of to go to Washington and everything. One day we were I was on the Appropriations Committee, and the Sergeant at Arms came up and said, there are two gentlemen out in the hall, and said they need to see you. and it was a day that we were having nothing but amendments, but the amendments were on NASA, on the space station, and about the next trip to the moon.
Right.
And the first thing that came to my mind said John Monroe and Joseph Holliday out in the hall. First thing, they wanted me to get them a seat in the committee room because it was packed, and that wasn't a problem. But I got them in, and I sat there for about an hour. We motioned each other, everything. And I said, you know, we taking amendments about going to the moon. I said, you think those two fellas in here want me to make sure that there's a sign saying the moon? Don't forget Galvat's Ferry, stump speaking, Galvat's Ferry, South Carolina, a sign on the moon. Scared me to death for an hour, but when I finally finished the meeting and got out, it was a totally different matter they had. But I thought sure that whole thing, how am I going to, I can't get it passed.
Yeah.
I couldn't say no to them, but I know that I couldn't get it passed because everybody wants something on the moon if you did. But that was I thought about that. I never told them that, but it was.
You never shared with them that
no,
you were sweating bullets.
I didn't. Cause hell, heck, I think they'd have probably asked me to do it if
if you'd given them the idea, right?
But I did sweat that, and I remember meetings with Senator Hollings. I remember with the holidays at one of the homes when they were thinking about strategy for running, and it was a place that politics was abound. If you were around those guys, particularly this time of the year, it was politics. Oh, yeah. I'm better for having the experiences I've had at Galvat's Ferry. It's wonderful.
You know, I was so fascinated reading a little about you, John, and to see the experiences for you back in, you think about, it was at 72 maybe, where you had overtaken a long time, was it 16-term congressman in the primary, of course, ultimately losing to Ed Young, coming back to get him in 74. I mean, coming back to reclaim that opportunity in 74, and then successfully running for multiple terms there. But that experience for you back in 72, stepping out of the state legislature stage and determining that you wanted to serve a much larger populace. What was that like for you, John?
Well, the first thing, I knew I could do it when I did the first poll and saw I had a 3% recognition factor. I knew I had it made. 3%.
Wow.
3%. The gentleman that I defeated was a fine gentleman and a very good friend of the Holidays.
16 terms.
16.
Yeah.
He was in Washington the year I was born.
Wow.
And I had run his campaign or helped run his campaign a number of times, and I told him I wanted to be in Congress. And in this beautiful furniture store we're sitting now, I'll never forget, I was driving Congressman Millen across this 501 bridge. And he said to me, 2 years before, he said, this was my last term. And he knew I was going to run. We were coming across this bridge right out in front of this store, and he said, I've had so many people come in to want me to run again. I just wanted to tell you I think I'm going to run again. Well, I had to drive him to Conway to a meeting, and I didn't like it a bit after that. I got really upset because I thought we had an understanding, and I came back across this bridge and let him off at his car. He said, now, 2 years from now, I won't be running. And I said, well, Mr. Congressman said, I worked hard and made a lot of commitments on our conversations. I'll get back to you, sort of, before I left it, because I didn't know what I was going to do. I had it planned that I wouldn't have opposition from an incumbent congressman.
Right.
So, and you know, history tells the rest. I with my 3% recognition factor, I knew I couldn't run less than second. But then 3 people came in, and I thought, well, you know, I might be third. But fortunately, that didn't happen, and it was. Galvat's Ferry gave me the boost at that time. I got to see a lot of people from Florence and Dillon and all that come down that were in the district that I didn't know as well. I got to meet them at the ferry, at the speaking, and it has created friendships for me that go to this day. I mean, Mayor Bennettsville was in my house this week and talking about the number of times that he's come down to the stump and how he first met me here, and he was one of my biggest supporters all through the time I was in Congress. So the stump, it means a lot to me. It means a lot to this area of the state, and it means a lot to the history and the people that don't in this area, and we have a lot of them. You know, I've got a lot of friends that haven't even been to Brook Green Garden or to Huntington Park.
Right.
But to have those opportunities, and particularly have the opportunity to come to one of the last absolute demonstrations of a person being up with no notes, nothing, no anything, just you got to tell your story,
right,
and get it across, not just to people in ties and suits,
sure,
but farmers and people that absolutely work in the heart of this county and this area, and you got to tell it the way you mean it. If you don't, you got too many people listening. They aren't going to forget.
Oh, so
it was fun. It has been great. It's been a great part of my life. I have enjoyed the opportunity to serve, and Gallant's Ferry is just a bit and part of that is sort of makes up my structure.
Big celebration next Monday, obviously, highlighting Jim Clyburn and John Spratt, two, I'm sure, good friends of yours, two men who deserve the recognition. And did either of those men overlap with you? John Spratt wasn't yet there.
No, John came right after I left, as did Jim.
A little later.
I was elected the deputy, the freshman whip when I was elected.
Right. In 74.
Right, and my whole ambition, well, Tip told me to change. I said, Mr. Speaker, I really want to be the majority whip. I said, when did you decide you wanted to be Speaker? I asked him. He said, the first day I came here. No. And said, John, you'll be a good majority whip, and he had appointed me as a deputy.
Right.
He said, but go ahead and plan to be Speaker. Make that your.
Well,
he couldn't say anything better.
He
couldn't say anything better. So but I enjoyed immensely the deputy whip job, and I had a small little office about the size of this table, but it was in the Capitol.
Right.
And that is a plum that anybody that served in the House or the Senate that says they aren't appreciative of is not telling you right, because it's. We have great offices where we work, but to have an office in the Capitol, and I had that those years as deputy whip. Now Jim's got Congressman Clyburn's got the great office. It's a beautiful office, and when I went in to see him a while back, I saw that little old cubicle that I had there about the size of this.
Oh yeah.
And some very attractive young lady was sitting in there, but she could hardly move around because I couldn't move around when I was there.
You couldn't move around
but
then. Yeah.
We were in the Capitol.
That's amazing. Yes. Golly, John.
But the people that have an opportunity that will not come next week to Galveston Ferry are missing a treat. If they should bring their children, they should have cameras and all, because there aren't many places in the United States, if any, that you will find as unique a spot with the diversity of the people, the America passing by all around, but you're there and you're a part of what is happening at that time. It's a wonderful experience, and I encourage any of your listeners to please consider coming. It's free. You can, for a very modest amount, get a really nice meal, and you'll meet, at this instance, that the holidays are put together, Jim Clyburn, the majority whip, third in power in the House Representative, John Spratt, the brains, economic brains of the House, and the Speaker's top person that she leans on, John Spratt. They are just like what do you say, peas in a pod or whatever. But they are together, and she depends on him so much. And having the Speaker, Tip O'Neill, depending on me to get him free golf matches down here. Speaker now depends on Jim to get her some votes and some other things. And he is a leader, as is John Spratt. And our numbers, the Democrat numbers, are down. As far as membership is concerned, we all used to be Democrats up there, and that started changing. But we have two now that have as much power or more than the rest of the other six together.
I know you think of the other four, but the fascinating aspect there of South Carolina with only 6 seats and 2 men there with tremendous influence over what happens across the board. It's amazing. Jim Clyburn, as you say, the majority whip, and John Spratt, both through tenure as well as through his position there. Amazing.
And we're fortunate to have them there, and I believe we'll probably, I'm reading that we may have, after the next census, both North Carolina and South Carolina may have another member. you ought to think about running.
Oh, John, wow. Let's talk to Russell yesterday. Yes, we should have gotten. There's a tremendous turnout when you think about so much that has to happen, obviously, leading up there. And for you, those 3 terms, have you maintained some level of friendship with Ed Young, for instance, who you ultimately lost to in 72 and then reclaimed that opportunity in 74?
We had three races, and he won the pivotal one in the beginning, and I was fortunate the next 2. But yes, one of Ed's daughters is here in Myrtle Beach, and her husband and our friends, and every time Ed comes down, we've become good friends. Every time I see him, and have enjoyed that friendship. I'm glad I won 2 out of 3, but the friendship has been good, and I have. I'm fortunate to have been in one of the largest classes elected in Congress, the largest number of Democrats.
Right.
And we have, there are 4 committee members now that I serve with, as well as 2 in the Senate that I serve committee members now, and I keep not only I send them contributions because they're good friends and I believe in them and I know they're doing work for America, but it's having served with them, having had lunch with them or dinner hundreds of times and all, you get to know them, you know their families, and I know that we're in good shape, and I'm just so pleased that the Democrats were able to take Congress and they become chairman rather than the minority leader. And now one of the Holiday's good friends is now chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee that came down here with me some over the years, and the transportation chairman is a good friend of mine that's been here that's been doing billions of dollars in transportation that needs. So I don't have any influence, but I do have the friendships, and I can see them, and that's enjoyable. And it came about, just starting right here, just talking to a few people and starting at Gallup.
Well, highlighting and again those friendships that ultimately they can pass on to other folks. As you highlighted, John McMillan was a tremendous friend of the Holidays, but ultimately, when you ascended to his position there a few years later, the relationships were no longer. I mean, they weren't hurt. I mean, ultimately, you were still able to bond well with that family and maintain those friendships for many years, even in the future.
And sort of the thing, south of the border, Alan Schaefer was a good friend of Congressman McMillan, and of the Holidays, was a big McMillan fan and should have been. McMillan had I-95 moved over to south of the border. I don't blame him for being friends. And then after I won, Alan was a good friend. To me, and called on me from time to time to do not things for him, but for people in Dillon County that needed some up. So all of that, a lot of that for me stemmed from the Gallups Ferry stop.
Ultimately, that focus on service, it truly is and has to be serving the, whether we think about Gallups Ferry as a place to begin that, ultimately it comes back to service.
It does. It's we have in a struggling state. When I say we are in comparison, we are struggling in many ways. Good leadership in our congressional delegation can mean a world of difference, and it can mean and seniority. And I when we first went up, all of us said, well, we don't want to be like those old fellows we defeated. And now those old fellows up there called him and said, John, send me some money because I got to win this one more race. And they've been there 30 years. So it's seniority becomes much nicer after you have it. So
listen up. We've just got a few minutes as we think about 4:30. The entertainment kicks off. The official event kicks off at 6 o'clock. Russell shared with us yesterday that Morgan Martin will be the MC this year, which should be fun.
That'll be fun in itself.
Seeing and Tommy taking a little break this year. But of course, to see the folks intermingling, as you said, face to face, as opposed to the oftentimes this kind of a setup where it's not necessarily scripted, but it's not eye to eye. Russell was talking about that yesterday.
It's a different feeling. It's a different. It's a chance, and I think it really shows the person running how well they can perform. Might not be the word, but they have to have a strong sense of where they're going, and if you can't express that to a person eye to eye, you're going to have a hard time expressing it to the voters that you don't get to see
Right.
other than your ads on the paper or on television or ads in the paper. So that one-on-one experience that you get starting at Galveston Ferry is indicative to me of certainly what sort of speaker that person's going to be, at how well he or she can deliver the message that wants people to follow them, that makes them want to do things for them. You can't do it unless it's on one-on-one. If you aren't good on one-on-one, no matter how well you are on television or anything else, it's going to slip up and it's going to show.
Ultimately, your political bug may have gotten kicked off there on that driving experience at
Could
age
have.
15
It could
over
have.
the stump.
I knew from when I got to high school, I certainly wanted to be in politics. I wanted to be governor, and I think my annual says I'd be governor. And then I got in the legislature, and at that time, after Johnson had left, President Johnson and all, the money strings were back in Washington more than and it's tied back now. It's coming back more to the states, but I saw that the money was in Washington, and if I wanted to get anything done for the district or the state, that's
Right.
where it should be.
Right.
Did I make the wrong choice? I don't know, but I certainly enjoyed it. And somebody told me the other day, asked me, said, did I know why the Capitol had a rotunda? I said, no, I don't know that I do. He said, well, that's so that the politicians can run around in a circle without running into each other.
We're going to have to wrap with that, John. I'm
I
sorry.
look forward to seeing you. I look forward to seeing you at
Absolutely.
Galveston Ferry. You can just bring the caviar then.
We'll have it there next Monday. Stay tuned to Carolina People with the Honorable John Jenrette coming up. Think about his first stump experience more than 5 decades ago. But he's not the only one. There'll be a lot of folks there next Monday that have been there even longer than he. Get out there, rain or shine. 4:30, the entertainment kicks off. Obviously, the big event kicking off at 6 o'clock. Whether you arrive at 6, arrive at 4:30. Russell said yesterday you can even arrive a little earlier and take a tour around Galveston Ferry. Get out there, the Galveston Ferry Stump, next Monday. John Jenrette, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Absolutely.